Om Sahana Vavatu Sahano Bhunaktu Sahaviryam Karavavahe Tejasvinavaditam Astu Ma Vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. May that one protect us both. May that one nourish us. May our study be full of strength and vigor. May our study be enlightening. May we not unnecessarily cavil with each other. Peace, peace, peace be unto all. Okay, good. So this is Vedanta Series, question and answer. There are no questions, there are no answers. I'll pause, and I'm sure there's a question.
So I was thinking about the Holy Mother's prayer on not to find faults in others, but learn to look at our own faults.
Yes, okay. Oh, yeah. Please unmute to complete your question.
Okay, now I hope you can hear me.
Yes. Good.
So I had 3 questions with regards to that, not finding faults in others and learning to find our own faults. So the first is, in an organization, you need to see other people's faults so that you can place them in the right place, and otherwise. So you do need to look at the faults of other people to a certain degree. At least I am in a place where I have to judge others' work. I need to grade, so I need to see faults. And secondly, I tend to give the benefit of doubt to the others. But once I see that, no, this is the fault of the other person in their character, I tend to dwell on it a lot. So I can't take my mind off the fault. It's like the tongue going to the missing tooth. I keep on dwelling on the fault. And then the third is, I lack the will to correct my own faults. So my faults are obvious to me, but I can't correct them. The habits are deep rooted. So even though I can see my own faults, I can't correct them. So I thought that if you can elaborate on some of these things, on how to actually practically implement this thing, learn to see your own faults rather than faults in others.
All right, so let me try and summarize your questions. Firstly, Mother asks, not only Mother, Sri Ramakrishna, and every spiritual teacher will say that rather than find fault in others, find fault in yourself. First question. How is that possible? If there are faults all around, things don't seem very perfect. Secondly, and for us, of course, if we are in the role of teachers, then we have to try to make corrections. Even teachers in a school will have to make the necessary corrections. The second part was a declaration that you cannot avoid dwelling on the faults of others if it's their fault. And thirdly, you cannot correct your own faults. So let us deal briefly with the last 2 questions. Of course, see, Jesus said, be perfect as your Father in heaven. Was he serious about it? Did he mean it? How can we be perfect if it is not possible? So the only conclusion we can come to is it is possible. The word can't should be struck from your vocabulary. Nothing really is impossible. There are some things that might be improbable, but nothing is impossible. So Vedanta deals with different points of view. These are not contradictory points of view. These are complementary and supplementary points of view. What we call the urge toward perfection is really another word for evolution. Evolution is a drive forward. There's a certain direction to it. Only the most crass materialists will say, this is all just chaotic nonsense. There doesn't seem to be any purpose or direction in it. But clearly, If you're an archaeologist and you see a bone and you date it with carbon dating and other techniques, and you see another one with a slight difference and another one with a slight difference, and you see things going on in a series, it would be a logical conclusion to say there was a change and a development and an improvement. So in the same way, all of evolution is to do with change and improvement. But Vedanta's final conclusion is nothing has to be changed or improved on. There is no incompleteness anywhere. Are these two contradictory positions? No. The one is the highest supplementary position you can find. And sometimes you have to start with that and then catch up and say, in order to get this understanding, step 1, step 2, step 3, all these have to be undertaken. Or the other choice is to start from the bottom and start saying, yes, there are faults and so on, make the corrections and so on, go on like that. But you can't leave it there. Your final conclusion has to be the highest one. Now, I've come under fire on a number of occasions when people discuss and ask a question about reincarnation. I said, well, with a twinkle in my eye, I said, with a sense of fun, I don't believe in reincarnation. I don't believe in this incarnation. Why would I believe in a reissue of it? But you see, I can't leave it there. And those who only hear that don't hear the rest, because I'm starting from your highest conclusion, and then I have to take you back and trace, how did I arrive at that final conclusion? And when we introduce language such as seem to be, then it makes more sense. So let us use that language of appearance, a parishional language. Let us start from the highest conclusion then and catch up with apparitional language. The highest conclusion is there is no fault anywhere. There's only one perfection everywhere. Now, I'm very fond of quoting Kathopanishad passage in regard to this. I'm very fond of bringing us to this environment. And the individual environment that we have is called something like a city, with all the avenues and operational difficulties and problems of a city. Yesterday, we were discussing in our yoga session the idea of prana. But is it you who is breathing? Is it you who is directing energy in 5 different ways? According to the yogic in subtle physiology, energy is directed 5 ways. It's directed upward, it's directed downward, and then there's a direction which equalizes the energy everywhere. There's a direction which is localized for digestive purposes. And there's one which is circulatory as well. So all of this, these 5-fold pranas, these 5-fold directional aspects of energy, is it you who is doing it? And if you think it's you, then the Kathopanishad will take a different view. Kathopanishad will say this. It will tell us that Ya unayati urdhvam. All the deities worship that adorable one. What are deities? This body has many different aspects which are revealing to us. The eyes reveal the outside. It's an illuminating factor with regard to the truth about the external world, of what is seen. The photons are caught by the eye. There's an arrangement. The eyeball is curved in such a way that the stream of light streams into it in a special way. You have a part of the brain that catches that and makes a recall. Yes, it is like this, it is like that. And then we identify, we have seen X, Y, and Z. The ears are also doing that. The ears are listening to sounds. While you may be watching this thing called Swami Purnananda on your video, but at the same time, there are sounds also around. You are listening to my voice. And when my mouth opens, and you see it, then you can match the two. He's saying this, and maybe he's using other things such as hand movements, facial expressions, tone of voice. All these things are being observed by you. Now there's an internal instrument, an antakarana, something like a car engine. Now, some people may have purchased a new car, and you'd have a bad purchase if you only purchase the body. There has to be an engine as well. So what is the engine that is moving the car? That engine is the energy source for the car's movement. But is it really a self-reliant, self-perpetuating force? No. Just like prana in the body, there has to be something, some one entity that moves it. And all the others are just minor components, component parts. So all the deities worship what? That adorable one. That one, if you want to use this analogy, that drives the car, starts it, drives it, determines where the direction will be, knows the laws of the road, and goes ahead. So when that one is seated in your imagination in the middle, that one is pushing the prana upward, the aparna downward. It's not you that's doing it. It's that full and free perfect one, which is internal there, and which is doing it. And when that departs, as it were, in other words, when the body itself gets worn out and breaks down, it looks like a departure, but actually that one is just remaining and the body is going off. And the association of it all may survive. Now we could find fault with your car. We could say the car hasn't got a good security system. When the car has a puncture, we can say there's a fault. In fact, most cars today will show a light saying there's a fault. But we have to be very knowledgeable and clever about it. When the oil light comes up red, we shouldn't make a diagnosis. The oil light is defective. When the oil light shows, it would be a mistake to say the oil light is defective. It would be a better diagnosis to say, oh, maybe there's no oil in the car, we have to put the oil in there. So this is a kind of fault finding, which is not a criticism, because the car is designed to do it. It's designed to exhibit the faults. So in the same way, the world is imperfect, but the entity that's occupying it is perfect. And when we see that perfection, we can't find fault in others because, firstly, we acknowledge the inherent imperfection in everybody. Jesus' language for it is dramatic. Instead of removing the splinter, tiny, tiny speck in somebody's eye, why don't you remove the huge beam in your own first? And it's only really by taking stock of your own difficulties, your own inaccuracies. There was this an extract from Imitation of Christ, and it tells us exactly this. It says, find out your own faults, examine your own shortcomings with all humility. And that's why we do the Enneagram, by the way. Those of you who have taken up the course of the Enneagram, the workshop, and are practicing it. The whole idea is to find where your particular compulsions are. And the whole of the course is designed to see, okay, this is the compulsion. Some remnants might remain, but there's a direction for it. And the point is, everybody's in the same boat because everybody is evolving in their own way. Everybody is struggling in their own way. And we have no reason to criticize anything and criticize others. And if we take this up as an occupation, then it's a full-time occupation. You'll be finding fault in everything. This is not right. That is not right. And then our final conclusion is, God is a stupid God. He made a terrible world. I could have done a better job. He could have made the cloud a little bit lighter. He could have done this. He could have done that. And there are many materialists who level this criticism. When the anthropic principle is espoused, that means the principle that says that the whole universe is harmoniously balanced, so finely tuned to the nth degree, that if you change any small component in the universe's structure, you'll destroy the whole of the existence that we know as the universe today. How do you explain this? So the hardened materialists will say, well, because we live in that, that's our expectation, then make some kind of excuse about it. And they'll say, actually, you think this universe is harmoniously operating, but galaxies are crashing into galaxies. And you think that the biological life is so clever, but what is the point of the appendix? And what is the point of this? They'll find some difficulty or fault with everything, but they'd be hard-pressed really to make a convincing argument when you see the complexity and perfection of every part of organic life, of every part of the galactic life, of every part of what we call matter, of every part of the subatomic arrangement. You can't but stand in wonder. And the wonder should yield to a sense of adoration and thankfulness. What is religion? Religion is taking an entity. The English word God is derived from the Germanic hud, G-U-D, which comes from the Sanskrit hutam, the one worthy of offering to. It's not that we fear any consequence. It's that we stand in awe of some entity which is beyond our sense of imperfection, our sense of a little faulty entity here. The whole Sanskrit word for nature, prakriti, implies something which is imperfect, something which is uneven, and is struggling to find its own perfection, we may add, on the way. The struggle to find its own perfection is what we call evolution. Evolution, universal evolution, that is cosmological evolution, biological evolution, spiritual evolution also. But our highest conclusion is nothing is changing, nothing is evolving. So if we want to not find fault with others, if we want to see what is behind the imperfection, we have to go to the highest conclusion of the Vedanta. That has to be our first port of call. We have to see the kingdom of heaven within. We have to understand we are all made in the image and likeness of that supreme that we call God. And if we fail to see that, then our natural tendency is to find fault with others in relation to ourselves. But a teacher will not find fault. A teacher it's the wrong way of putting it. A teacher will find the perfection within. Already that knowledge is there. A good educator will say, a child already has this knowledge. A seed already has the capacity to develop into a tree, full-blown tree. We just have to bring out the occasion. We just have to we have to coax that knowledge from within the child so that it unfolds. Sister Nivedita understood this even before meeting Swami Vivekananda, taking the lessons, the modern lessons and the modern approach in her day anyway of modern education. She understood that, but she understood it more having associated with Swami Vivekananda, because his Vedanta philosophy that he was espousing says, perfection is already there. Don't try and change or criticize everything. And if she had done that, then her mission in India would have failed completely. Only love the person, don't criticize. See the contrast where she would have come from, this England, where she would come from a society which was intellectually of a superior type, which was a complex society, which had its own difficulties. By the 1890s, England was still a third world country by and large. The vast majority of people, about 2/3 of the people is estimated, lived in poverty. Certainly it would have been true in Ireland anyway, even maybe up to the 1950s in Ireland. I saw a documentary recently on the tenements in Dublin, with children not wearing shoes. And the tenement problem in Dublin, where there was slums, was not even attended to till 1969, when there was a big demonstration. Big riots took place. And it highlighted the difficulties of the squalor in a place like Dublin. So England was a place where Charles Dickens was there, highlighting some difficulties, highlighting the urban squalor of London. And in the Industrial Revolution, we see the squalor increase and child labor is there. And the British Empire, who brought in the wealth to Britain, it was run by the military in the upper echelon of society. They were fine, even though they lived in unhygienic conditions. Still, that was purely out of ignorance. So how to look at that and improve? Sister Nivedita was encouraged, no, don't criticize anybody. We had enough criticism already. No country has been there under the continuous spell of foreign occupation for 1,000 years. 1,000 years continuously. And you will see the contrast. See the letters that he writes. Half-naked people, unbearable heat, squalor everywhere, poverty everywhere. You can hold your nose and say, oh, what a pity. This is a standard kind of civilization, forgetting that that same condition is there in your own country. So don't find fault with others, because the more you find the fault is more a verbal endorsement of imperfection, equivalent to saying that things are not right. The world is sinful. The world is a terrible place, forecasting, therefore, that the world will be a terrible place. Why should we be optimistic? Optimism is based on a penetrating vision that sees through the external aspects and goes to the very core of perfection within. And there we see things as God sees them, not as we see them. Our eyes are tainted. Our judgments inaccurate. Can you not see God there in perfection, as religion would call it? Can you not see the oneness which is there, manifesting in all these diverse ways, in all these different forms? That is the basis of not finding fault with others. That, and the idea that on the human level, on the material level, on the physical level, on the level of nature itself, it is designed to be imperfect. It is not designed to be perfect. Otherwise, there's no point in evolution if we're already perfected. Evolution, by definition, don't forget, the natural unfoldment, the striving for perfection. What steers the attention through the eyes and through the ears, one after the other? There's only God's grace which is there, because the equipment is there. Supposing you get a car, the equipment is there, all the roads in Ireland and elsewhere are there. Surely you should be able to cover the whole map in one go. The information about life and nature being there, the mind being there, the attention being there, surely you should capture it in one go. But nobody does it like that. It requires some aspect of the mind which you call attention, which is subject to this one by one thing per second, one thing per second, one thing per second. And in that, what will you put in it? Now, if you say in a resigned way, I can't do it, well, then you can't do it, leave it. But then you'll suffer from it. I can't improve, therefore leave it, don't improve. So we have to take a different attitude, and it can't be a sauntering attitude. The more energy and life and effort we put into it, the more we'll get out of it. We have to take it with an adventurous attitude, take it with an optimistic attitude. We can't say, oh dear, what a pity. We should replace it with, how amazing, what a glory. There's a story of a great, great cello player whose name was, I'll think of it shortly. She was a great, great child prodigy in playing the cello. And by the age of 5, she was playing in her first concert. She was being selected. She was going for a cello competition at the age of 5. And she was running and dancing toward this competition, but somebody saw her and thought she just finished her audition. Says, how was your audition? She says, no, I'm about to get the audition. So happy and excited was she to go and do that. But today, when people go for auditions, having practiced, now they go for fear that they will be judged adversely. Somebody will see their playing, make a criticism, find a fault, and then they won't succeed. They won't get into the orchestra. But the child with full enthusiasm, even if they played wrong notes, they would have succeeded in passing their audition, because the very joy of playing, the very feeling about it, deviating from technical standards and norms. You should play this, you should play like that. Putting all that aside, playing from the heart with great bubbling enthusiasm, she became one of the world's greatest cello players. Child prodigy, but what was this key to it? This great enthusiasm that she had, this wonderful abundance of energy. This is how we should approach life. And when we make a mistake, as we all will do, we should not say, what a pity. We should say, how astonishing, how awesome, how fantastic. Because without making those errors, how will we learn? We learn more from pain than we do from pleasure. Pain is our way of taking the mind in its possibility to a higher place, a more profound place. Physical pain is only because our attention, the body is trying to repair itself, and the mind is being steered there because the mind is at the level of the body. You take the mind away from the level of the body and push it higher. Push it higher for concern for others, occupations, and occupying the mind with God's glory. How do we do this? In spiritual life, we can take the simplest possible practice, loving and repeating God's name. Japa is the simplest way that everybody can do. And those who have been initiated and taken a mantra from a guru, a competent teacher, have the most potent tool in their hands and in their mouths and in their minds, because they can repeat this essence, this spiritual essence of a personal, close, chosen ideal. And they can repeat it. There's no restriction on how many times you can repeat it. And since we have the whole opportunity of time to repeat it in every waking moment, surely we can do that. Supposing you say, I don't have time for meditation. I don't have time for spiritual practice. I'm not in a monastery where we have the luxury of some private space. You know, all the monasteries were developed principally so that people could get away from all the difficulties and noise of the world, and at least in a beautiful sacred place, they could go in sacredness and secretness into the internal, the interiority of their life. What a wonderful thing to access that. But does it work? In a monastery, there are also people. I was reading about the old medieval monasteries, and it was very interesting because we find records of people complaining to the abbots. oh, so and so is not bathing properly. So so and so spelling. So and so this. So and so that. So and so fell asleep in the chapel, and so it goes on. You see, all these beautiful records, because people living with people still have the problem of people getting on with people, and inherently wanting to find fault with the other, instead of finding fault with oneself. Find fault with oneself. Be healthy. Once you're healthy, then perhaps you can be an example to others. And people learn principally by example. Your children learn principally by example. You sit at your shrine and meditate, the little child will want to sit beside you. They have no idea what you're doing, but they would want to emulate you. When they see the mother sweeping on the floor, they want their little broom, and they also want to sweep with you, with the mother. So we set an example. The primary teaching is by example. This is why we study the lives of the great saints and the great sages. These holy people, we study their life and we keep close company with them so that we may in some way pick up some tips, some hints, how they live their life. Live your life in exemplary way. You will surely not go to a doctor who says, you know what you should do to improve your respiration? What is that, doctor? You should stop smoking. Would you go to a doctor like that? I only smoke, by the way, when I'm on fire, and hopefully that's on rare occasions. So you don't go to somebody who's not an exemplar. You don't go to somebody who's not a product of their product. And that is the way we learn. And until and unless you have gotten to that position, that you are comfortably ensconced in your own purity. That is why you see teachers are rare. Everybody wants to be a teacher. But the teacher is not somebody who knows any better. The teacher is not somebody who thinks that you are a fault and want to be corrected. The teacher is the embodiment of equal love spread everywhere to everybody. The teacher who sees some entity that nobody else normally sees. And when they see that entity, does it not pour out from every pore of their skin? Will it not be in every action that they do? Will it not be in every movement, every facial expression? Will it not be in the secret recesses of the most private moments of their life to be examined? So everybody wants to be a teacher. There was that old story, of the student who goes to the teacher. What does a guru do? A guru sits, and a guru, tells you what to do and how to do it. What does a student do? Well, in the ancient days, of course, the student has to look after the cattle. The student has to serve the teacher's household. A student has to wash the floors and wash out the stalls and feed the livestock. A student has to stay up late learning and studying, spending maybe 16-hour days working, as opposed to a teacher who sleeps comfortably at night and gets served. Their feet get massaged by the student. Oh, I'd rather be a teacher then. So we would all rather be a teacher correcting others. But unless we're in a position to do that, we can't do it. So developing the spiritual life and understanding that this perfection lies within us, not just an intellectual understanding, but a real attunement, and doing it progressively. If you have an adventurous spirit and you have not arrived on Mount Everest, as is many people's aspiration today, then it is because you lacked the training. What is the training necessary First of all, you don't have a sauntering attitude. You recognize realistically what the hardships will be. And then you start small steps of training. You start maybe walking for a few kilometers. Then you start walking with a pack. Then you start walking long distances. Then you start building up muscle. Then you start accustoming yourself to the cold. Then you have to start accustoming yourself to the altitude. Then you have to start climbing. You have to learn the climbing techniques. You have to learn about all the equipment. 4, 5, 6 years may pass before you feel that you can go and climb Mount Everest. But with a sauntering attitude, you won't do it. With an adventurous attitude, you'll do it. With a certain motivation, which drives you to do it every day, you'll do it. So this training is required. And so if you say from the very start, I can't do it, then your training is all finished. No training is possible thereafter. But if you say, I can do it and I will do it, not I wish to do it, but I will do it. There's a great difference. Then with that great will to do it, now fortunately for us, whether we like it or not, we are driven toward it. We are driven toward it because nature is designed for that. Nature's imperfection drives us toward perfection. But how long will it take? So most of the drawbacks are what we call delaying tactics. Another way of saying, when the attention is diverted away from your goal, this diversion becomes responsible for a delaying tactic. And the delays, that's up to you. How long we delay is entirely up to you. Enjoy the world if you like, no problem. And step by step, progress toward the goal. Or you can go directly with great concentration of mind. Concentration of effort and mind is entirely up to you. The degree in which you apply it is entirely up to you. As I often quote that great philosopher Nissen, life is a journey. Enjoy the ride. Enjoy the journey. The journey should be thoroughly enjoyable. It may look like a struggle in the beginning, but meditation in the beginning looks like a struggle. Spiritual practice in the beginning looks like a struggle. But how is it that those who have mastered it don't find it a struggle? They enjoy it fully. Get to that point. Don't be in a hurry about it. Be patient. Purity, patience, and persistence are the 3 qualities that are required. And so how do we cultivate all of this? We cultivate those 3 qualities. Patience means I recognize that time comes in a series. I can't achieve everything in one go. I should be prepared to take just a few steps, one step at a time. What is that Chinese saying? A journey of 1,000 miles begins with one step. First step, and then another step, and then another step. And fortunately, we have this framework of time to do it in. So all these opportunities are presented to us in the form of moments of time so that we can steer our attention 1 unit per second, 1 unit per second, 1 unit per second. Patience. Secondly, or as an addendum to that patience, as an extension, patience means patience with yourself. Patience means patience with your circumstances. And patience means patience with other people. And then persistence. Persistence means that we keep the goal in mind all the time and that we are motivated to persist even though there will be drawbacks, and there will be drawbacks. But take it as a game, as a play. And don't be put off by one small setback or another small setback. Don't give up. Don't say, I can't. I can and I will. So patience, persistence, but above all, purity. Purity means I have no egoistic inclination to do with it. I don't register myself as a body and mind that has to struggle against unfair odds. I'm registering myself as some entity made in the image and likeness of God. An entity that is already perfect, that has to reveal it. An entity that has faults and blemishes, and my job is to clean the mind completely. Clean it every day, clean it every second. And I've already said a simple way of doing this will be the repetition of a mantra. How can you possibly have any blemish in the mind on the one hand and simultaneously be repeating God's name on the other? How can any doubt come into the mind? How can any temptation come into the mind or any fear come into the mind? And at the same time, you're repeating God's name. Is it possible? Not possible at all. Seeing God everywhere, in every face, is it impossible to be impatient or criticizing of another? Seeing God in all the opportunities in the form of sun, air, wind, rain, food, is it possible to find fault in anything? Is it possible to be self-centered? Is it possible to be doubtful? Is it possible to be fearful? Is it possible that there be some temptation if your mind is directed in this way? Why do we hold these philosophy classes? Because we need to have a firm conviction of the non-duality, essential non-duality everywhere, while still acknowledging the duality of our circumstance. In a non-contradictory way, we can do it. Seeing that there is a starting point and that there's a conclusion, and we may not understand the oneness of non-dualism. We may not experience that, but at least know it in principle and set it as a goal, and then move toward it and try to see the flavor of it in everything. So don't be in a hurry. You do it progressively, do it lovingly, do it. And most people will do it through love of God. So do it with the companionship of the lover, the loving God with you, holding the hand and so on. Those people who have a more intellectual bent, that's fine. See it then as one entity pouring through all hands, all eyes, all heads, all ears. And we can do the thing alternately as well. Thinking I am the Lord's child on the one hand, then looking and seeing, spread everywhere. Kathopanishad in the preceding few verses telling us that this body is something like an 11-gated city belonging to one that is unborn, whose consciousness is unflickering, goes on to say, but what is that? It is there as the moving sun. It dwells in the heavens, in the skies, in the space beyond, pervading everything, dwelling in the interspace even, residing here in this earth. If you think of it in restrictive spatial terms, staying inside a jar or a vessel, but living also among men, living among deities, among those entities that may be existing in parallel, dwelling in space, in every area, Vasu, in every quarter. Taking birth, no doubt, in the earth, born in sacrifice, emerging from the mountains, like water emerges from the mountains, and changing and great. What a wonderful emperor that would be, or empress that would be. You can put it in any terms you like. If I'm dealing with feminine gender, I'll say, you are the empress. You are the empress of the universe. You think you are the empress of this body. No, you are the empress of the entire universe. When you discover it in this body is just the headquarters. You'll find it everywhere. So have that all-seeing attitude.
Swamiji, thank you, Swamiji.
All right.
Well, one follow-up question. So how do the temptations go away with japa?
In the same way, you see, so let me try and just endorse what I had said previously. Filling up, if you like, you consider this as an empty vessel, filling up with God's name, what temptation will be there? It's not a question of, I have temptation, how will I get rid of it? It's a question of, how will it be displaced? It's displaced by filling up with divine love and bliss and presence. Filling up with God's presence, you'll displace all the other things. If I say fearless, fearless, will fear occupy my mind? If I say purity and love, will despondency and pessimism occupy my mind? If I'm looking in a church and looking at a face, or in a temple, looking at the face of the image there, or the entity there, or the picture there, what temptation will come simultaneously? The two are incompatible. So it's not, I have this, how will I get rid of it? Leave it where it is and fill up with God. If you have mud or specks of dust in water, pour pure water inside, and sooner or later that comes up and bubbles over and gets displaced. So this is called sublimation. Filling up with purity and goodness, you don't have to worry about all the old friends of temptation and fear and doubt and all of those things. The opposite of doubt is faith, isn't it? Faith and fearlessness. The opposite of fear is fearlessness. The opposite of desire is fullness. Desire means I have a feeling that there's a hollow, is some incomplete thing. Things are not full. When I see, oh, things are actually full, what became of the desires? Desire means I have something that's incomplete. I need to go and get, if my grocery cupboard is bare and has no provisions in it, then I have to go to the supermarket and get something. But if it's already there and always stocked and always automatically replenished, no need to go to the supermarket. It's like being in water and saying, when will I be immersed in water? When will I learn how to swim? It's like a fish saying, when will I get to the sea? I'm already in the sea. No, but when will I get to it? This is an impossible question. Like the personalized version of a wave saying, when will I become the ocean? When will I ever become the ocean? No, you are that. Your ignorance declared that you are an independent entity, like something like a wave, combating other waves and struggling to purify yourself. No, struggling to be the ocean, no, you're already that. Give up the struggle, already you're that. Assert that. And let the feelings and emotions catch up to it. Let us understand it in practice also. All right, we have time maybe for one last question. Then we leave it there.
Swamiji, just a follow-up question. when you take the attitude that everything is already, it's perfect, what about when you're watching somebody, let's say, that you care about, and they're neglecting themselves, like health, or they're self-destructing? Do we, because also sometimes the temptation is to, get in there and help or try and motivate. Is it the same thing to just, they're in their karma and they're just where they're meant to be? Is it the same attitude? You just have to leave it be. It's not imperfect, even though it obviously feels uncomfortable to watch it.
So if you see that there is a condition in the street that needs your input, then naturally you'll put it there. You can view it in this way. Let's exaggerate the example. Supposing you see a beggar in the street. So understanding that, everything is perfect, you ignore the beggar, would that be correct? No. The view of perfection will stimulate you, will urge you to go and play the game and do the service. So but we can't, we can't eat everything on everybody's plate. We only eat what's on our plate. What I discovered since coming to Ireland was that there is a generosity of spirit seemingly here, and I'm told it comes really from missionary days in Africa. And I used to joke with people and say, you see, I'm coming from Africa and I'm coming to help you with all your drug problems. It's a kind of way of me making a little fun, because some years ago, children in Ireland were told to raise pennies for the blacks in Africa, the poor blacks in Africa, you see. And so that became a kind of ethos of conscience. Now, in a sense, there's nothing wrong with that. It's better than not having a conscience. But it's also a misguided understanding that we have something that has to be corrected. No doubt there is something everywhere to be corrected. And if you have somebody who you feel needs to be assisted or helped, that's your first impulse. Second impulse is, how can I serve God in this form? And if the opportunity for service is there, we do it. So in our own tradition, we don't say, I can help the poor. I can help this, I can help that. We have a shift in language which says we can serve God in the form of the poor, in the form of the uneducated, in the form of the distressed. Can we see the difference? This is Vedanta in practice. This is non-dualism in practice. So we have to step back a little bit and revise our approach and way of thinking. And what that will do is it'll enrich our practical movement with the other person, if you understand. It'll help the other person, but our attitude is not, we are fine and they are not, and we need to help them and we need to bring them up to where we are, with the assumption that we are on the top of the mountain. We are not. But with the idea, Lord, you are standing there, and you're therefore a situation that has come into my immediate environment. You're a problem that has come onto my plate. That's all right. In other words, the Lord of the universe or the Mother of the universe has decided to present herself in your environment with a view to asking this one question: do you recognize me, my child? And then will you respond to me? Now, you see, so Mother Teresa puts it in this way: uplifting the poor was not her mission, but seeing Christ in them, that was her mission. That's how she puts it. Since we're talking about, since we're in the whole environment of Christmas and so on and so forth, you see, Jesus put in this, he who did this to these, the least of my children, did it unto me. And then he presents a drama, post-mortem drama. When did I feed the poor? When did I feed the hungry? When did I clothe those who are unclothed and so on? When you did this to these, the least of my children, you did it unto me. So that's the attitude we should adopt. The most important thing, of course, is to understand, let me be in a position. If I'm a mountain climber, then I have to be experienced enough to give the helping hand to the other, isn't it? There's no good being an amateur mountain climber. And then, unfortunately, you can't really be of that much assistance to somebody. In fact, you may actually be responsible for their downfall, literal downfall down the mountain. So it's an interesting and delicate question, there's no doubt. But we have to make sure our attitude toward people and places and events is on the basis that it is only that oneness which is there. That will increase our lovingness. It'll go beyond the borders of charity, mere charity. And it will now go toward love. Love. That's the point. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.